got Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers sitting in the Homer's Corner this week to talk about his beloved Arizona Cardinals. How are you doing this afternoon, sir?
I'm doing well. I love this. I've never been able to embrace the Homerism on the show. I mean, I doubt we can strain it very well, but we try, and now I don't have to. I can just be a The Cardinals will win the Super Bowl this season. I think we all agree on that, and we'll just go from there.
I love it. We don't want you to have to put any caveats in front of your fandom here today. We want you to be unabashed. Sure. Let the people know. You know, these are not your opinions. These are facts about the Cardinals.
No question. I'm glad somebody finally appreciates that. Looking
back on last season, a very solid 8-8, third in division. I mean, let's be honest. The NFC West is a pretty tough division here. How are your thoughts on last season in general?
Yeah, it was such a promising start to the season. I don't remember I think they were 6-1 at one point in time. And so the hopes of a playoff berth and some opportunity there to make a run, they certainly percolated in us Cardinal fans' minds. So it was a disappointing end to the year. Kyler got banged up at the very end. It didn't seem like we had a shot. And like you said, I mean, a really tough division. Very painful when Russ keeps getting it done in this division. And we just, us out here in Arizona, we'd love to have a free pass. We'd love an NFC East type of season where we can go put up an 8-8 season and win by 4 games or whatever the case may be. But yeah,
we all.
What's nice is instead of just turning the page to 2021 with, what could have been, when you have a young quarterback that's 23 years old in Kyler Murray, there is always the optimistic hope of another tier jump for Kyler. An opportunity for him to elevate his game, for Cliff to understand the NFL, to try to figure out how this team can make the next step. And so it's a transitionary year on defense. That Patrick Peterson's been such a stalwart back there for years, and we didn't bring him back. And J.J. Watt, the offseason courtesy gift that Houston gives us one a year. So we're happy when it shows up, and we accept it. And but I'm optimistic. I'm certainly excited to see what we can do. I think the defense is better. I think Kyler gives you that, you got to have that piece, right, to have any chance at making a run. You don't just want to shoot for 8-8. You need a chance at making a run, and 17-game season hits, and, who knows, maybe we can get it done this year.
Well, look, as both Dustin and I know, as Packers homers, as we talk about on this show, having that quarterback.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Alan, us, same boat here. It's nice to have that comfort of a true quarterback leading you. And we've been spoiled, of course, but hopefully you enjoy those spoils for a very long time with Kyler, and you can kind of move pieces in and out and around him and just build from there.
Yeah, we talked on the show recently about, the masterful work of the Miami Dolphins and acquiring picks and building this team the right way. And it's like, unfortunately, at the end of the day, if you got the wrong quarterback, it's not going to matter. Like you have to have somebody there that can get you. Can they beat Patrick Mahomes? Right? Like, can you? If everything went right, could you get past Patrick Mahomes or, Josh Allen, whatever the case may be? So, I think we at least have that foundational piece for now, and maybe catch lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the arrow's pointing up for your team without a doubt. Speaking of, we've gotten through the fast and furious beginning of free agency here, and want to get your thoughts on the free agent moves here that the Cardinals have made. So you've lost Kenyon Drake, Dan Arnold, and looks like at this point, most likely the Iron Man, Larry Fitzgerald. And you brought in to replace him, AJ Green. So just want to get your thoughts on free agency here for you.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I've ever talked about AJ Green without 47 disclaimers and like legal documents that I have to present to like the audience. And okay, I'm allowed to be optimistic. Yeah, maybe he's got something left. DeAndre Hopkins is on the other side of the field. AJ Green is a player that is, it's not just speed for him. He's a tactician. He's somebody that is physically bigger than most of the cornerbacks he faces, and will not be drawing number one attention. So, when you look at what Larry brought to the table at this stage of his career, it's been very hard emotionally for us Cardinal fans, because there's part of you that just wants Larry on the team every year, and it doesn't matter. Just pay him what he wants, put him in the locker room. He'll give you a touchdown here and a big play there, and he's not going to drop anything. And it's valuable, and he's just part of our history in Arizona. And for goodness sakes, if we win a title the year after he retires, I don't know how he'd be able to handle, how he could handle it or how we could handle it. But at the same time, you kind of look at it with, okay, if he moves on, this offense does have the ability to become more dynamic. There's things that he brought to the table with his sure-handedness and first downs that, maybe Andy Isabella doesn't give you, but it'd be nice to have some young legs in there. If Christian Kirk can slide inside a place that he's had success before, and you've got A.J. Green and you've got DeAndre Hopkins, and, who's to say they don't go after one of the big names in the draft, where they're sitting at 16, it's either one of the big cornerbacks seems to slide back to them and then replace Patrick Peterson, or it's, what if Devontae Smith's there? Is this the future? Are you going to bring in the next, are you going to give up on Andy Isabella, so to speak, and then just bring in another future pillar of the offense? And, last year it was like, oh, you traded for Hopkins, but what if you drafted CeeDee Lamb too? And so I think that the offense has everything it needs to be successful. I'm very thankful that they didn't bring back Kenyon Drake, and that's not really it's not to say that Kenyon Drake's not a good player, but I think that's probably where I'd cap it. Like, he's a good player, and Chase Edmonds is a really talented offensive weapon, and so spending the money at that running back position, we didn't need to do it. And Dan Arnold, we'll miss the postman references and being in his corner all year long. But at the same time, that's another position that the Cardinals could use a weapon. But they just got to put it together over multiple games. Last year's a perfect example of what we saw, in the season breakdown, starting 6-1 and then ending 8-8. Like, we saw week to week, it'd be a drive that looked great and a drive where you're like, Cliff Kingsbury shouldn't even be a Pop Warner coach. Like, there were parts of the game where, like, it's like the intangibles, right? Like, he can call a play that works, but the intangibles, the between play, the clock management, the red zone play calling, the hurrying to the line of scrimmage or not, just something was off. And so I don't know that there's a lot of we're diehard Kyler fans in Arizona, but I think we are hesitant Cliff fans, where we're like, let's hope it works out, and the magic is there between their relationship. But I think we're going to be running out of patience if this year goes any worse than last.
If you have a consistent Kyler who is not banged up, and you have DeAndre Hopkins out there, and it still doesn't get done, then you get real nervous, I suppose, with coaches in that situation. Right. So that's fair.
Yep.
I did just want to call out, because you mentioned Kenyon Drake, and you're not too sad to see him go, and Chase Edmonds is there currently as the de facto head guy, I guess. Are you comfortable if they don't add anybody who you perceive to be better than Chase to that backfield? Do you think that he can lead that?
That's a great question, because there's kind of two thoughts, right? There's one where it's like you need to add somebody better and he's a compliment to them, and then there's another where they just add depth. Like, they're not going to go into the season with their existing depth chart at running back, I don't believe. But I do have enough confidence that Chase is good enough, which is the way you put it, to be the lead runner in the backfield and a great pass catcher. One of the things that people maybe that are on the outside of Arizona don't understand about Chase Edmonds is that this is a super smart running back. Like, he is an asset to the team in more ways than we track on the fantasy sheet. He knows where to be. He's a very, very good pass catcher. And so, yeah, I think he's good enough to lead the backfield. But you just, in today's NFL, you've got to have more bodies than Chase and I think Eno Benjamin. So,
sure.
But it could be a veteran. You could bring in a veteran runner. Who knows if
Todd Gurley?
Lev Bell, Todd Gurley. Somebody shows up and just is a 50-50 backfield, which I hope it's not Lev Bell. Please no.
Maybe James Conner, fingers crossed. Sure. I don't know. From my perspective, that might be nice.
Well, and that would be a nice mix and match because Chase is smaller back and a pass catcher, and they'll probably add somebody that can be more of a threat around the goal line is my thought.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, especially looking at the draft picks that the Cardinals have this year. You've got, one in the first and one in the second, and then you don't have another pick until the 5th round. So with some of the other needs that the Cardinals have, I can't see them picking a running back with either of those, early day 1, day 2 picks. And then when you get to the 5th round, it's, flip a coin if it's going to work out or not at that point. So I could see them bringing in one of these veterans as the offseason moves along.
And that point about their draft capital is super valuable for fantasy players because, if you're hesitant about going all in on Chase or trying to acquire Chase Edmonds with the hopes of him being the starter, like you're right, they're not probably going to spend a valuable pick on a running back as a compliment. So Chase has at least an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And then we've addressed the tight end a little bit here with Dan Arnold leaving. Who's going to take that position over? And does it really matter for them? I mean, with all the other wide receiving options, and as you mentioned, Chase Edmonds out of the backfield being a very good pass catcher as well, does that matter in the Kingsbury offense or not?
I think that when you have a threat in the passing game at the tight end position, it is a great asset to a young quarterback. And I think you saw that with Dan Arnold last year with Kyler. Kyler utilized him in some big situations. Maybe A.J. Green takes a little bit of that load off in the sense that, on a go-to down, you don't have, 3 corners or the defense bending towards Hopkins and these little routes that he had to run, and maybe Green can take some of that away and be a go-to type of receiver in those situations. But I think that's a big question for Arizona right now, like for Steve Keim and the Cardinals, is how are you going to fill that pass-catching threat at the tight end position? I believe Max Williams is still under contract. He's not really a pass-catching threat, but he'll be on the field a lot, and he can catch a ball or two when you need him. But, dreams of Kyle Pitts are, going through my head.
If you don't mind, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of the other teams in the NFC West here.
They all suck. Terrible.
God. All right, we can
perfectly said.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Hate them all.
Yeah, let's start with the Seahawks. So Russell Wilson, and I'm sure you guys have your ear to the ground a little bit more than we do here, considering it's in division.
Sure.
How do you feel that relationship with management is? I mean, there's been a lot of trade talks with him being unhappy. Is this just smoke, or is there actually something to it?
I think that there was something to it. I don't know how much of it is leverage to conform the offense to what he wants it to be. I don't know what goes through Russell Wilson's head. I really don't. He's a weird dude, and he's a great football player, but he's a weird dude. And sometimes he tries to troll people in social media, but he doesn't quite hit the mark, and you just don't know how much is crazy and how much is crafted. And I think he's kind of nuts to want to move on, but at the same time, he seems to be bending more towards personal legacy than he has, winning on the field. So that's why I think that there's some smoke to that. I mean, I know that they were listening. I know that they sat down with the Bears being one of the teams that really made a pitch, and cooler heads would probably prevail. Him and Carroll have gotten to the playoffs so often. So, one of the things on our recent episode for Don't Overreact, we did an overreaction episode, and Jason brought up, probably don't overreact to them being a run-first team. They'll probably be a balanced team. That's what Pete Carroll wants to do, and to keep Russ happy, you're going to have to let him throw it to his newly minted Tyler Lockett contract and DK Metcalf. So, if he wants to move out of the division, I won't complain. I'll sign the petition. I think I might have started the petition. But, unfortunately, with him at quarterback, you're a threat every year.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of his wide receivers, as you just mentioned, coming up this next fantasy season, specifically for redraft here, who would you rather have out of those two receivers?
Yeah, Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf. I would take Metcalf. I would. I think we've seen Tyler Lockett is an elite NFL wide receiver. He is an inconsistent fantasy wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't possess the physical size to demand the red zone opportunities. So it goes up and down with him. He's great. I mean, Russ throws him the ball and he catches the ball, and it's perfect passer rating, and they are a symbiotic relationship. But I think Metcalf offers you both the physical size to maybe build on that consistency, and then the upside of just being a young player that maybe we haven't seen the best. I mean, fantasy players love the maybes, and he's got more maybes than Tyler Lockett in a good way.
I just can't quit Tyler Lockett's boom games. They make me so happy on the 2 that you get every
50
year.
50 points, 60 points.
You crush in that. And it'll at least be attractive for his ADP, I assume, is going to be further down than DK's, please. I'm assuming by at least a couple of rounds by the time we get there.
That's true, and that's a situation where you might get a much better value on Tyler Lockett.
Mm-hmm.
I am interested, Dustin, if you're okay to move on to the Niners, because my most burning question here is related to that man, George Kittle.
Oh, man.
And
did you see him tweeting on April Fool's today?
Yeah, it just really well done.
I mean,
is there anything you can't do, quite frankly?
No, he perfect Photoshop job. Him in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform, both insulting Jacksonville that no one could ever comprehend that to happen, but also just trolling the internet, which is great. So.
Really elite stuff, quite frankly. But speaking about the elitism of George Kittle, I mean, we're at the point now where there's so few relevant fantasy tight ends. And of course, he's in that top tier with 2 or 3 guys. So drafting him in round 2 or possibly earlier for redraft, is that something you can get on board with?
Yes, is the short answer. Definitely. I think, as a Travis Kelce manager this past season, it's a delight. It's a treat. It's a wonderful way of being to not even worry about that spot on your roster, to not be taking up another roster spot on ping-ponging between 2 streaming tight ends. I think George Kittle's in that category. So I certainly think a second-round pick is worth – I think Kelce in the first and Kittle in the second is totally fine. If you want to just not worry about that part of your team, those guys are locked in. It will be interesting what they do at quarterback and what the sentiment is around the team. Is it Justin Fields? Is it Mac Jones? Trey Lance? I don't know. I don't know what Kyle Shanahan's doing. It's always interesting when you pay exorbitant draft capital to move to 3 where there's no guarantee of who's getting there. But I think we all assume Lawrence, Wilson, and take your pick. So, but that variable does exist where like Kittle has got maybe part of his season with a rookie at the quarterback position, but one thing I think we've learned about Kyle Shanahan is that he just builds his offense around players. It's not just his offense. It's an offense around the skill sets of, if it's Debo, it's a Debo game. Or if it's a Kittle, I mean, every game's a Kittle game. So he's going to manufacture touches, and they're not all downfield. So I think you're pretty safe with Kittle.
Mm-hmm. And then 2 players that Jake and I have had many discussions about this offseason already, and we actually have a season-long bet on it, is who is going to be the number 1 wide receiving option for that San Francisco team. Is it going to be Debo or is it going to be Ayuk? And I know Ayuk is the new hotness.
Yeah. I didn't want you to give away who was for who because I don't know. And so I don't want to, I'm going to make one person happy and one person sad. Now we're presuming health. Are we presuming health in this situation?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Then I am on Team Debo.
Ooh.
I like it.
and Ayuk went to school out here at Arizona State, and he's a great player. And there was literally nothing. It's not an anti-Brandon Ayuk take. It's a pro Debo Samuel take. So if I have to choose one and I don't have to consider which one's going to get hurt, then I think I lean on Debo's side.
Perfect.
I love
All
it.
right. If you don't mind, let's hit the Rams real quick here.
Sure.
All right. So the backfield. Akers seems to have the inside track here as the starting tailback on that team. And he finished the season very well. Do you think that he is the lead dog there, or is it going to be a split with Henderson?
No, I think Cam Akers is primed to do some special things this year. And, we haven't got to see the Matthew Stafford-led Rams yet. And As a Cardinal fan, I don't think I want to see that. I mean, I really love Matthew Stafford, and so it's just brutal to have him move into the division because I want to see him have success. When you leave Detroit, you want to see those players have success. And then, Sean McVay is a great coach, so this is why it's not fair. The Cardinals in this division, I mean, you're naming 3 teams that can all compete and have great coaches, and that's where it's like, oh, Cliff, I hope you can hold up against these names. But for Cam Akers, I think you saw the torch being handed over last year. He's a player I loved coming out of Florida State, and you just wanted to see him have that opportunity. So the team is not going to give him every snap. I don't think they philosophically believe in the Todd Gurley plan anymore. And so I think Henderson will be worked in, but Akers is the better player. And I think the team trusts him more, and so I'm pretty confident in his fantasy value.
Okay, and then we'll just throw one last question here at you,
Sure.
And we'll let you go. So speaking of Stafford, which position player on the team do you think gets the biggest boost with him coming to town?
It's interesting. I don't think I've thought about that specific question. I know that on the show we did talk about, Gerald Everett left town for Seattle. And so Tyler Higbee, big contract, talented player, kind of hit and miss with Everett out there on the field. That's a player I'm interested in looking at because he's, Matthew Stafford, I think, will find a lot of value in finding Tyler Higbee all over the field. And so if this offense is better and the touchdown opportunities go up and Higbee's reliable in that department, he could be one of those more upside than you think tight ends. And I was really anti-Tyler Higbee last year, but I think that that's a person that could make a mark.
Any last thoughts on the NFC West?
Any last jabs that you want to get in?
I do actually. I think considering the comments I made on the show, I just want to make sure that I retract any positive ones about any of the Seahawks, 49ers, or Rams players. I was lying. They're all terrible. Cardinals will run the division, Super Bowl champs, beginning of a dynasty. I think the things we all accept to be true. 17-0, first team to go 17-0 in the regular season. These are practically foregone conclusions. So I really appreciate the opportunity to bring that to your attention. You can find me on Twitter at Andy Holloway, and I appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully we have a very exciting 2021 season. I'm looking forward to it.